Hi again, everyone, and welcome to Badger Breakdown, brought to you by U.S. Cellular. I'm Mike Lucas from UWBadgers.com. I'm joined by the voice of the Badgers. There were plenty of questions about this defense coming into the season because of the huge graduation losses, and everybody had a right to wonder how this defense would play out. But based on what we've seen already this season, especially the last two games, you've got to believe they've already exceeded some people's expectations.
I think so. They're fun to watch right now, and they're doing it. You know, Michael Caputo, I think, as Gary Anderson said a couple weeks ago, is probably the face of the defense. But it's a very selfless defense. You look at the tackle stats last week, and I mean, it seemed like everybody on the field had at least a couple for Wisconsin, and this is a defense that'll play a lot of people as well. Very active. What they were able to do to Gary Nova and his backup quarterback at Rutgers last week. It was another punt fest. They've had a couple of those now against Maryland and against Rutgers. First time Rutgers has been shut out in 12 years. This defense right now is playing very, very well.
Rutgers coach Kyle Flood made mention of the fact that this defense doesn't maybe have an All-American candidate, and I think that's fair. Mm-hmm. But he said they play together, the Badgers play together as an 11-man unit.
Yeah, I was talking to Michael Caputo about that earlier in the week, and I used the selfless term to him, and he says, you know what, any player would love to rack up big statistics, but as long as they're doing it all together they're racking up the big statistics, where they rank and overall in total yards, points allowed, all that, they're at or near the top in the nation in these categories. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago, where they're fun to watch. It could be Caputo making a play. It could be Vince Beagle making a play. It could be Marcus Trotter. It could pick a guy. And it seems like during the course of the game, most, if not all, the players on defense will make a significant play and at worst force the team to punt. And they've been, you know, at least they're not creating as many turnovers as they want, but they've given up 7 points in the last 2 weeks. So I guess that's okay.
And there's a reality to all of this, too, and they understand that they're so fragile, one or two players injured, away from being vulnerable. And we've seen now the impact of Warren Herring returning to the lineup along with Marcus Trotter.
I think what's that old line we heard from the former basketball coach Dick Bennett, know who you are. I think this team has a pretty good grip on who they are. You know, the guys on this defense, the guys on this team in general, they know who they are, and defensively they know they have to work extremely hard. And these last two games, they've done, in particular, they've done a great job of changing the field position through the defensive work, through special teams. Last week it was a block punt. Kenzel Doe has done a very good job returning punts when the other team has given him a chance to do that. So, you know, collectively, they're working really hard. You talk about the star power. Outside of Melvin Gordon, there probably isn't a whole lot of that quote-unquote star power, but this is a team that still controls its destiny, to use that line, in terms of winning the Western Division.
I know nobody would probably use overachieving in context with the offense, but maybe this offense has overachieved. It has a 1-2 punch in Gordon Clement and a good offensive line, but it has yet to really answer all the questions about its quarterback.
You know, we were talking last week where they missed a couple big throws down the field. They left points on the field. The last three games, they've scored 38, 52, and 37 points. So if you can say they've left points on the field, which they have, and they're scoring anywhere from the high 30s to the low 50s, thinking, okay, that's pretty good. Now, have they played the 85 Chicago Bears? No, but they're still scoring a lot of points. Big play capability from Melvin Gordon and Corey Clement. We saw a couple of weeks ago from McAvoy, his ability to run. Joel a couple weeks ago hit those big throws. They want to hit more of those. So their opportunities are there. One thing that was encouraging last week was that we saw some of the younger receivers get involved. Statistically, it's going to look modest, but I think when you talk to Gary Anderson, when you talk to the position coach Chris Beatty, it's significant for a Rushing, for a Sanders, Jamerson to get reps, and if they can get a couple of receptions along the way, it's very, very important.
And while nobody matches up with the 1-2 punch of Gordon Clement, Purdue can offer a tandem with unbelievable speed in Hunt and Mostert.
Yeah, well, Raheem Mostert, you could say is the fastest player in the Big Ten, and I know they tout him as maybe being the fastest player in college football. He's a Big Ten track champion. Very, very good running back. Hakeem Hunt is versatile. He can run it between the tackles. He's also their second leading receiver, and he'll end up, in all probability, being the leading receiver since their wide receiver, Danny Anthrop, is out for the year with the knee injury. But Hunt is that is quite a punch that they have for an offense, Mike, that is considerably better than it was a year ago. And it's gotten even better here in the last month or so with Austin Appleby at quarterback, because he can run it and he's starting to come around as a thrower as well.
Well, that's a good point, because once Appleby took over, it expanded what the Boilermakers can do offensively. And now you have to account for him as a running threat.
They scored 31 points against Michigan State. Now, is Michigan State's defense as locked down as it was a year ago? No. Is it still pretty good? Yes. It ended up being a 2-score game that was really a 1-score game. There was a defensive score late for Michigan State. They were in a shootout game at Minnesota. It was one that quite frankly got away for the Boilermakers. They're up in the second half and Minnesota rallies to win, but Minnesota puts 38 on the board in that game. So I don't want to build this as a great team, but I will say that you can look at the record, but put it in perspective. They've had some tough assignments here. Michigan State, they were just at Nebraska a week ago. This team is putting up significantly better numbers offensively than it did a year ago.
Here's one final question. I'm not sure I can answer it, so I'm going to throw it at you. Is there any chance that this Wisconsin team could get caught looking ahead to Nebraska? Could this then become a trap game at Purdue?
Well, it could, but I go back to a couple minutes ago. This team really seems to know who it is, and as long as it stays grounded in that respect, it'll be fine. It won a road game last week. That's one. And I'm sure Gary Anderson is saying, okay, you did it once, do it again. I thought it was really interesting this week in listening to him in his news conference or just in other conversations. He's happy with what's going on, but he's not quite ready to throw out the Valentines all the way around. He did mention specifically Darius Hillary and the work he's doing at corner, but he's not quite ready to proclaim this as that, knock down, drag out, light them up kind of football team yet. The opportunity is there if they can continue to take care of their business, to use another old line, make the Nebraska game big, and there's one way to do that, and that's by winning at Purdue.
For Matt Lepay, I'm Mike Lucas. Thanks for watching Badger Breakdown, brought to you by US Cellular.